Good evening. It is now Tuesday, the 6th of September, first day of school for a lot of kids. And oh, every day there's something sobering coming out, which speaks to what I believe is a clear and unavoidable sign of what's coming in the coming weeks and months. The latest thing to come to my attention is an interview with a woman, with a doctor by the name of Dr. Nili Kaplan Mirth, which was broadcast on Ontario's TVO, which is TV Ontario, public commercial free television for the province of Ontario. If you're an American watching this, it's roughly an equivalent of your PBS, but it's provincial, which is like a state. And they have a TV show, and it's called The Agenda. I believe that's the name. Let me check. And now I've lost the link that I had. Darn it. Apologize for that, but I'm going to scroll and I'm going to find it because it's being shared widely on Twitter right now. I had it lined up on my Twitter feed because I want to play for you the audio portion, and I found it. Yeah, and it's The Agenda on TV Ontario today. I just want you to listen to this doctor. Her name again is Dr. Nili Kaplan Mirth, and she is a family doctor, and she's also something that's called, she has a PhD in medical anthropology. And I don't even know what medical anthropology is, so I had to look it up. And medical anthropologists study issues such as health ramifications of ecological adaptation and maladaptation, popular health culture and domestic health care practices, local interpretations of bodily processes, changing body projects and valued bodily attributes, perceptions of risk, vulnerability, and responsibility for illness and healthcare, risk and protective dimensions of human behavioral, cultural norms, and social institutions, preventative health and harm reduction practices. I don't know what to make of it. There's a whole laundry list of things that what medical anthropologists study. But again, she is a medical doctor, and she's on this show, and the clip that is shown, that's being shared widely, is a minute long, and she's sitting in what appear to be typical scrub type top, sitting down at a desk, wearing headphones with a stethoscope around her neck for effect. And a mask on her face while she's sitting alone being interviewed. You can find the clip I'm referencing, I'm sure, widely on social media. It's on Twitter. And her name, again, if you want to search it, is Dr. Nili, and that's spelled Nili, and then her last name is hyphenated, Kaplan with a K, Kaplan hyphen Mirth, Myrth. So I'll play you the clip. And I want you to take particular note of the, I will say, manic level of stress in this doctor's voice. So if you're ready, here's the clip.
We have the tools to use. We know what we can use. We have masks, and they should be N95 masks. We should be using HEPA filters. We should be improving ventilation. We should be providing adequate paid sick days and encouraging people to stay home when they're sick rather than returning to workplaces. We have all of those tools. They are achievable. They are low cost. They are effective. It is inappropriate to say that masks are some form of hardship. They are not. They are not cruelty, Matt. They are not in any way restricting people's ability to make friends, to play, to work, to do any of the things. In fact, there are places in the world where even, for example, in Italy, opera singers are on stage wearing masks. There is nothing that you are saying that is based in science or medicine. What you are saying is based in right-wing, anti-mask, anti-vax ideology.
And that's the end of the clip. And holy cow, what I am hearing is the sound of water being poured on the seeds of division that are going to be, we saw what happened right up until March of this past year with the masking mandates, with the vaccine passports, how it pitted people against each other. And now we have this woman, and I'm imagining she's one of these individuals who tells you what her pronouns are, but I'm just going to say he or her and she. And she is pouring water and fertilizer onto these seeds of division that made life so problematic over the past year and a half or so, especially ever since the jabs became available. But let's talk about the masks. She says that these are low cost solutions, and that everyone should be that masks should be N95s. N95s are not cheap. You could be spending, and you can't wear the same one all day long. That's disgusting and gross, as gross and disgusting as those cloth pieces of germ rags that people pull out and shove on their faces. And I would love to have a conversation with this woman. Not that it will ever happen because I'm nobody. She has a business. She's promoting. It's called the Common Ground Collaborative Care, CGCC, Common Ground Collaborative Care. She's as woke as you can be in terms of, she even has on her website, has the acronym LGBTQ, but she has it written different, GLBTQ. I think she's missing a few letters, needs to get up to date. And what I'm going to suggest is that we are heading, I'm not suggesting it, and I'm not a prophet, but I'm telling you it's coming. It's going to be a harsh winter season that we're coming into. Recall that before COVID came along, before any of this insanity, Ontario hospitals, Canadian hospitals, were war zones during flu season. You can search out articles from 2019, 18, 17, and patients piling up in the hallways, being treated in the waiting rooms in chairs because there are no more gurneys available. We have an aging population, and we are not a healthy population. We're an older and unhealthy population. And because of that, our hospital system was already overwhelmed before COVID came along. In Ontario, articles were written prior to COVID coming along stating that Ontario hospitals, the normal state of affairs was for hospitals to be over capacity. That was normal. Now, during this COVID era, we've been hearing frightening stories about how hospitals are approaching capacity. So things have been better during the COVID era in terms of the amount of patients accessing our healthcare system than they were before COVID. Before COVID, normally we'd be at 110, 120% capacity. Now we get to 90 and 95%, substantially lower than where we used to be, and people are hyperventilating over it. Simple fact of the matter is that we've known for 20 plus years, 30 years in Ontario and in Canada that major investments and expansion were needed in the healthcare system, and nothing was done. Our political talking heads would always talk about, they would always use the term, we're driving efficiencies, which is just political speak for we're going to have our healthcare system do more with less. And the result of that was hallway medicine. In Ontario, and I think it was in 2018, we had a provincial election, and Doug Ford ran on a platform that included ending hallway medicine. Imagine all it took to end hallway medicine was what was supposed to be, or what is supposed to be, a global pandemic. And so speaking to those like myself who recognize the fact that masks are at best a placebo, and at worst they are germ spreading rags, because I had a mask sitting out somewhere, but I never wear them. Thought I had one on the other side of my computer. No, I don't. So regardless, I was at work today talking to a guy who actually was scratching his nose through his mask, this medical PPE that's supposed to be, potentially contaminated. And this is a guy who touches products that are put out onto shelves. So welcome to cross-contamination heaven. If you get sick, blame someone who wears one of those filthy, disgusting germs. If you're going to wear a mask, at least have the common sense that it was taught in grade 7 and 8 health class, and wear the damn thing properly, and employ proper donning and doffing procedures, putting on and taking off. Don't touch the outside material. Don't stick it in your germ-filled pocket. But that's not going to happen. I'm farting into a hurricane. I know it. But and so the question is, what do we do? What do we do? You unlike this Dr. Nilly Kaplan Mirth, we haven't become manically crazy and germophobic, and so we're opposed to mandatory masking. Hey, far be it from me. If someone wants to stick a germ rag on their face, if it makes you feel good, fill your boots. But don't tell me I have to wear one. Don't tell my family we have to wear one. And it's easy to sound bold, and it's easy to sound, in a video like this, it's easy to spout off. I'm not my tone notwithstanding, I'm not a confrontational guy. I'm at my core, I'm a peacemaker. I don't enjoy conflict. I don't enjoy confrontation. And so when masks were absolutely required, like if you were going into the grocery store, you would absolutely be required. The signs were up outside. And so I complied. I considered my compliance passive aggressive and I still have them. They're hanging from my rear view mirror in my vehicle. Plastic little shield that goes over your face. Maybe the next video I'll show it again. A little plastic. It's like a mask, but it sits off the face. You're not sucking air through cloth. It's just a little piece of bendable plastic, and it attaches like a mask and has a couple bumps or a little rest to keep it off your face. I wore one, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, going to a blood clinic. with a family member who had to have blood work done, and they still required masks. So I wore that. And one of the workers there said, "Sir, you need to wear a mask." And I just looked over at him and pointed. And then a colleague of his said, "He is wearing a mask. It's one of those face shield things." And he just looked at me. Thankfully, I'm, almost 6 foot tall. I'm 220-ish pounds. The bald head. I get the impression sometimes I might be a little intimidating, perhaps. But anyway, what can we do? What can we do? And I'm going to suggest there's something we can do. And for some, it will be easy. Some won't like it. But we need to come together as much as possible. We need to seek out those who are not driven to irrational levels of fear, who have not ceded their ability to think critically. This Dr. Nilly Kaplan, the video I played, she's jumped the shark. She's gone. There is no going back for her. And there are plenty of other individuals who will point to her and say, "She's a doctor. I'm listening to her because she's following the science. She says, she's right." Forgetting the fact that there are other doctors in the world, and medical science is not, much of the time, it's not empirical. There are differences of opinion. Yes, she is a medical doctor. So is Dr. Byram. No, he's not a medical doctor, but Dr. Francis Christian absolutely is in Saskatchewan. Dr. Byron Bridle is one of Canada's leading experts on vaccines. He's a vaccinologist. His opinions are expert opinions. Dr. Robert Malone, one of the individuals who made key discoveries that led to the invention of mRNA vaccines. Dr. Peter McCulloch, the most published cardiologist in American history, and quite possibly, I believe, in the history of the world. Dr. Luc Montagnier, Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche, Dr. Michael Yeadon, former vice president and chief science officer at Pfizer. There are countless experts with differing opinions. This masking nonsense is garbage. Even if they do work, even if there is some efficacy, it still requires that it be handled and worn properly. And all you need are a functioning set of eyeballs to know that 99% of the time that does not take place. They are nothing more than an empty-headed virtue signaling device. I'll say that again. Masks are an empty head, vacuous heads. And now I've got Punk My Video throwing down another doctor's name, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. There are literally thousands. It would be exhaustive for me. I try to stick to the reason I mentioned Dr. Michael Yeadon is because he was a vice president and one of Pfizer's chief science officers. He started his own biotech company and sold it to Novartis for an estimated $1 billion US. I think that was sometime in around the year 2000, about 10 years ago. I think it was sometime between 2005 and 2010. Dr. Francis Christian, who writes a Substack article that I would invite you to follow and read. He was a teaching surgeon at the University of Saskatchewan, and also the co-editor of a medical journal. These are not questions. Luc Montagnier won the Nobel Prize for isolating HIV. Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche worked as a senior roles. He was head of vaccine development at GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, as well as holding senior roles in vaccine development with Novartis, with Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccine Initiatives, and the Gates Foundation. So I like to stick to the most highly accredited individuals you can find, because you can find a medical doctor who will substantiate any opinion whatsoever. And Dr. Byron Bridle, who his lab at Guelph University was funded by he was recognized by Public Health Canada as one of this nation's leading experts on vaccines. And so his lab was engaged in, I think it was April, May of 2020, to investigate the vaccines that at that time were currently under development. And they wanted his expert opinion. And then they shut him off when his expert opinion didn't line up with the political narrative that was being foisted upon us. At that point, then he becomes a quack. Dr. Francis Christian, highly respected surgeon, a teaching surgeon at the University of Saskatchewan, he has his teaching privileges at the university and his University of Saskatchewan suspended. And then he also had his medical license, I believe, was also suspended because he dared to raise the issue that for a child, the risks of myocarditis and pericarditis are significant enough that one should give serious consideration to whether weighing the risk of COVID versus the risk of getting jabbed. So the suggestion I'm going to make, and this is going back to my earlier videos, find a church. Find a good church. Even if you're not a Christian, find a good church. Because there are churches that hold Jesus Christ as the head of the church, and they are not bowing the knee to this agenda. And so if you want to find a number of like-minded individuals, find yourself a church that is faithful and that will, and we've seen, if you're in Alberta, James Coates, his Grace Life is the name of the church. I believe that's the name. It's just on the outskirts of Edmonton. Then there's, I believe the name is Tim Stevens. Both of these individuals went to jail rather than the doors of their church. Tim Stevens went to jail for conducting an outdoor worship service in a park in Calgary. If you're in Manitoba, if you're in Steinbach, there's the Church of God Restoration, a friend of mine, Tobias Thiessen. You can look into that one. They also have congregations. That same church has a congregation in Lethbridge, Alberta. If you're in Ontario, if you're in Peterborough, there's Hill City Baptist. There is, trying to remember the name, there are two, and they actually use the same building. And I'm not remembering the name of the other congregation, but either one, I've been to both. In Peterborough, Ontario, one is Hill City Baptist. If it comes to me as I'm talking, I'll mention the name of the other one. I want to say Harvest, but I know it's not Harvest. If you're in southwestern Ontario, my friend Henry Hildebrandt is as strong and as faithful an individual as I have found. And especially if you're not a Christian, you will enjoy going to Aylmer, Ontario, little tiny town of, I think it's 7,500 people, just south of London, very easy to find. So if you're in that neck of the woods, if you're out in Napanee area, there's a church there, Grace Faith Ministries, I believe it's called. I'm on Twitter, Gordy Canuck, G-E, and then Canuck is spelled C-A-N-U-K. If you want to friend me up, I'll follow you back and we can message and I can let you know I'm somewhat networked with a lot of pastors. Windsor, there's Dr. Aaron Rock. I've spoken to him before. There are churches all over Canada. Phil Hutchings I believe he's in New Brunswick. I'm not sure what city. Might be St. John, might be Moncton. He went to jail. There are faithful individuals standing up to this, and you need to get connected with like-minded people, because if they try and do what they did in the past and shut us down, you need to be connected, because when you're isolated, your only connection is to things like the television and to things like social media, and that's not real. That is not real. This is not real. I'd rather meet you in person. One thing, that's one of the reasons I went to places like Aylmer or to Napanee or up to Peterborough, is because this type of interaction isn't real. Real interaction is when you can shake someone's hand, when you can look someone physically in the eye. You can make a human connection. This is a virtual connection. It's not real. This is like trying to get warmth from a picture of a fireplace. It's not genuine. It's not real. I'm going to say a couple words on my friend Henry Hildebrandt and the Church of God Restoration, because there is a group out of the United States that is slandering and spreading gossip and lies about the Church of God Restoration. They're calling them a cult. They're saying that they break up families, and they're spreading all kinds. They're doing everything they can to discredit this church. And I know from whence it comes. I know what the motivation is behind it. What has happened is there are a number of individuals who have suffered from family breakups. And I'm going to tell you that, unfortunately, the church is not perfect, and no church will ever be. If I ever find a perfect church, the minute I walk through those doors, it will cease to be perfect. Churches are flawed human institutions. And what has happened is there are a number of individuals, men, who have had their marriages dissolve. They've either gotten separated or divorced from their wives, and they are not happy about it. There is a saying, I think it's Shakespeare, it doesn't matter, everyone has heard it: hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. That's true, but likewise, it's not exclusive to women. Men can carry a grudge and can be incredibly vindictive, mean, and vile. And there's a group of men in the United States and also here in Canada who have seen their marriage dissolve. And they hold to a view of Scripture that the man is in charge. I'm the king. I'm dominant. Don't dare you. And who have treated their wives in anything but a Christian fashion. But they look at Scripture and they find the passages that give them dominance, and they dominate. And that's not the good news that you'll hear preached in places like Aylmer, Lethbridge, Steinbach, or Greenville, Ohio, or Oklahoma City, or anywhere where this church has a group that gathers. They will teach that in the creation story, God made Eve out of Adam's rib. Why? Why out of the rib? Adam was formed out of the dust in the ground, according to the Genesis account. So God can make something out of anything. Why the rib? It's because women are to walk beside. If we were to dominate and subjugate women, then why not make it out of the foot so we could stamp it down on them? And so there are men in the United States. I don't understand what you're saying, punk my video, cheaper cut. But anyway, regardless, maybe that is not, and I'm not telling anyone that you have to go to the Church of God Restoration to be saved, because there's the Big C Church. And I do believe that Aylmer and Lethbridge and these places are part of the Big C, not the only part. God calls us to worship him in, we're to worship God in, my brain is not working too well late at night, 11:47 now. And it's from the woman at the well, Samaria. Archie. Oh, gee. Okay, now I understand the reference. Punk my video. Why do you make her out of a rib? It's a cheaper cut. A line from Archie Bunker from the old All in the Family TV series. But in the biblical account, when Jesus meets the woman at the well in Samaria, he says that the woman in Samaria says that you Jews worship in Jerusalem where we Samaritans worship on the mountain. And Jesus says, the day is coming and will soon be here when you won't worship in the temple in Jerusalem or on the mountain. The Father seeks those who will worship him in honesty and truth, in faith and truth. This is bugging me that I can't remember the exact words. Wasn't spoken in English in any case. Jesus would have been speaking Sumerian, I guess, or Aramaic, or possibly Greek. But I'll leave you to look up the passage yourself. But this is what we need to do. We need to get together. We cannot be isolated from one another. This was part of the reason for the agenda to begin with. The reason why lockdown measures were imposed, and the reason they didn't want us getting together, and the reason they wanted everyone standing 6 feet away from each other and afraid of each other's breath, is so that we wouldn't talk. Because if we talked, we'd find out, do you know anyone getting this? I don't know any. Well, there's got to be people getting this. I saw it on the news. Nothing really blew up. Ontario's hospitalization numbers were the worst they ever were. The number of people hospitalized with a positive COVID test reached their peak in January of 2022. Just this past January, it was over 4,000. That's worse than at any time previous. It was worse than when nobody was jabbed. And now we're entering the flu season, when under normal conditions, Ontario hospitals, the capacity issues, we go over capacity. That's normal. That's de rigueur. That's the normal state of affairs. And there's a reason for that. And I spoke about it in an earlier video. Why do viruses spread more during colder weather than in warmer weather? Well, first of all, you take a virus like influenza or COVID or RSV or any number of others. If they're an airborne aerosol virus, the humidity in the air gets dry in the winter months. We all know this. Our noses dry out. And I hate this dry air. You'll hear that frequently from people during the winter months. Well, what that dry air does is it allows those aerosols to linger in the air. I read a BBC article. It said they can stay in the air for days. Then talking about the dry nasal passages, you get dried out, dry throat because the air is dry. Well, that moisture, the mucus, if you will, within your nasal passages and respiratory tract, they act as a defense network against viral pathogens. And so that defense network is down. Another aspect is that in the cold weather, the blood vessels contract, and white blood cells, which are key to fighting infection, because they're contracted, white blood cell delivery, if you will, is restricted. And so that's another element of our God-given immune system. That's the defenses are down somewhat. And then another factor is that in the wintertime, especially in the northern hemisphere, we have much less sunlight. And sunlight is needed for vitamin D. And vitamin D deficiency is a proven factor in people having a weakened immune system. He's vitamin D deficient. So you're more prone. So all these factors are why normally things would be horrible in our hospital healthcare networks during the flu season. That's normal. And now we're entering a flu season. We're going to have flu. We're going to have COVID. Maybe I jumped the shark on the monkeypox because I was, and I'm still somewhat predicting 500-ish thousand cases by the end of September. However, looking at the numbers, some jurisdictions are not doing any testing at all. China has identified 0 cases. Do you believe that? Do you believe that the 1.4 odd billion people in China, that not one single individual has contracted monkeypox? That just says to me they're not looking for it. Don't test, don't find. Indonesia, another of the world's populous country, has 1 identified case. India, another 1.4 billion people, they've identified 10. Pakistan, another country with hundreds of millions of people, I think it's either 1 or 0. Russia, which has 150, 200 million people, I don't know exactly, but they're a largely populated country. They have 1 identified case. Do you believe that? I don't. And I know in the United States that I looked at the testing levels for the week. These were for periods ending August 6th. They did 12,671 tests. Then for the week ending on the 13th, 15,328. Then week ending the 20th, the 7-day period up to that date, it was 16,955. Then for the 7 days leading up to August 24, they only did 4,846. They dropped testing. So if you drop the testing, well, the cases aren't going to be identified. And because of the stigma attached with monkeypox, it's reported as a gay disease. Call it what it is. That's the way it's been reported. And not every homosexual guy is out of the closet. Individuals are going to test positive for or they're going to be donuts to dollars certain, or dollars to donuts, I forget the expression. They're going to be certain that they have 99% certain they have a monkeypox infection, but they're not going to go into an urgent care or a hospital and get checked because they don't want to be outed. So the numbers are what the numbers are. And and it's all part of the programming anyway. When they want to clamp down, when they want to use fear to impose restrictions and intrude into every corner of people's personal lives like they did under COVID, then they'll ramp the fear back up. And all they have to do is test. So that's my video. Dollars to donut holes. Thank you, Punk, my video. I think you're the only one who chimed in, and I appreciate it because it makes me feel like I'm talking to someone. But again, this is not my preferred medium. I was at having a coffee today just outside and met a neighbor. And I gave him my opinions full blast in a very friendly, conversational way. But he was asking me why I left my previous position. And was it time? You're getting old. What was it? I said, honestly, I knew they would mandate the jabs. He said, it was over the jabs. He goes, we'll have to we'll have to agree to disagree on that aspect, but I respect you having the wherewithal to stick to your convictions. And I said, well, there was no way on God's green earth that I was going to take those jabs, not after they were rushed to development after only 8-9 months and shoved into people's arms with no long-term safety data being looked at. I said every other mRNA has been around for 20 odd years. They've been working on it and couldn't get a single approved product because there was an issue of antibody dependency enhancement that always came up. And that's a long-term safety issue. So how do you avoid a long-term safety issue? Just don't do any long-term safety studies. Don't look at long-term safety data. Then you can say there's no proven long-term safety issues with mRNA vaccines because we didn't look for any. There's no evidence that there are any geese in the pond at my local park. Really? So there are no geese there? Well, maybe there are, but I didn't look. So there's no evidence they exist. So anyone saying there are geese in the pond at my local park, well, they're spreading false information because there's no proven evidence. This is the type of world we've devolved into. This is propaganda. This is a psychological operation, and they're robbing people of their ability to think critically. Getting back to that woman, Dr. Nilly Kaplan-Mirth, she's gone. She's gone, but she's going to be the Pied Piper for a lot of people who have bought into this garbage hook, line, and sinker from the beginning. And they're going to follow her like a lemming. And if you want to disconnect from the lemmings, and if you want to get away from the Pied Piper, I suggest you find yourself a church and connect with people. Connect with people who aren't living in fear. I mentioned in my last video that the church that I'm attending in my town has had people coming in because there was a sign put up, the electronic sign out by the roadway, said everyone welcome, vaccinated or unvaccinated. It doesn't matter. It's going to be hard, though, I think, for those of us who've been able to resist things up until now, who have either had the fortitude, and as well as, well, it's a question of your priorities. Do you idolize the job you hold? Do you idolize what do you idolize? Do you idolize the ability to play hockey, or to go to a bar or restaurant, or to get on a plane? I mean, I can get into scripture, and Jesus said that unless you're willing to take mothers, brothers, sisters, etc., family, friends, leave everything in truth, sell everything you have, buy the truth, hold on to it, don't let go. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And individuals who idolize other things will try and pull you away from the truth because they want you to justify and substantiate their worldview. If you're a Christian, that isn't your worldview. This life isn't the end. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And this life is not it. And it's only in Christ that we have victory. If you're looking to Donald Trump and Pierre Poilievre or anyone else, or even the doctors that I mentioned, you're going to be disappointed in the end. The only victory at the end of the day is in Christ. So find yourself a church that is biblically sound. And a good indication of that is if it's a church that said you can't come in and worship with us unless you show the Vax Pass, I'm going to say right now, don't go to church. United Church of Canada, don't go near them. The one in my town and most of them wouldn't let you walk through the door unless you had the vax. That's not a church. That's a coven. Anyway, I'll leave you there. If you have any questions, comments, Punk My Video says, trust no man. Trust in God. Don't trust me, I'll let you down. Don't trust Donald Trump, he'll let you down. Don't trust Pierre Poilievre. Don't trust anyone. Trust in God, trust in Christ. It's your only hope. I know it sounds like a Star Wars movie. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, your only hope. Well, that's a fairy tale. Christ is real. So God bless everyone. And again, questions, comments. I do these typically sometime around 10 to 12 at night. If you want to be notified, if you hit subscribe, then you'll get a notification when I'm doing one. I do enjoy the engagement. I appreciate Punk My Video coming on and engaging with me, because it animates me. And otherwise I can be a little too Lasonic. I'm rambling. Good night. God bless, and find a church.